हाय, मेरा नाम निष्ठा हांडा है और आज हम एक नई सीरीज़ शुरू करने जा रहे हैं जिसमें हम political figures and community members से बात करेंगे. And to start this new series, I'm going to be talking to Geoff LEE, member for Parramatta. So with a background in science, business and education, how did you get involved in politics?
Very unusual story. Worked for myself most of my life in small business. Had a garden centre and a landscape construction business. Worked 7 days a week, 10 years. Sold my business. Then I was in worked for the University of Western Sydney, where I was fortunate enough to become the Associate Dean. Enjoyed that, got my doctorate. And then part of my role there at the university was to do a lot of work with government and industry. And so I used to meet a lot of ministers, and then when the opportunity arose, I thought, why not take the opportunity? I thought I can give something back to the community.
Great. And being involved in politics, how have you found your experience with the community of Parramatta?
I think I first moved to Parramatta in 1992, so I think it was a wonderful insight into how actually Parramatta and the whole electorate actually works. Whether it's the business community through the Chamber of Commerce, whether it's working with the council, which I used to do a lot of I used to actually contract to them, whether it's community groups, which we used to serve through all the residents, which we used to service through the garden centre. It's been an excellent insight to see the needs and what needs to be delivered at the local level on the ground services and resources required.
Okay. And where do you see the Indian community fitting into Australian politics?
I think the Indian community at the moment is actually underrepresented in politics, and one of the things, especially in the Parramatta electorate, what I'd like to encourage is for more people with Indian ancestry to step forward. And just like, interesting you say that, is I'm half Chinese, but second generation Chinese, and it's interesting that I'm the first person directly elected to the lower house with any Chinese background for the New South Wales Parliament. So I think we really need to, especially in the Parramatta electorate, we have something like 9,000 people who live in the electorate with Indian ancestry, and certainly they're underrepresented. So we'd like to do everything to encourage those people to, join whichever party. It doesn't matter whether it's the Labor Party, Liberal Party, Greens, Independents, to step forward.
Okay, and how do you go about doing that? Encouraging Indians to be involved?
Certainly it's about talking to people, and as we meet people, it's encouraging them not only to play a role in their local community, but also, if they feel inclined, to certainly join. For me, it would be obviously the Liberal Party.
Okay. And so Harris Park is a sort of central hub for in Indian small businesses, food and fashion businesses. What sort of support is being given to those small businesses?
Okay, Harris Park, I think, has had a transition from it used to be dominated, I guess, by the Lebanese Australian community some 10 years ago. In the last 5 years, it's really been the Indians have embraced the area, and I think and made some wonderful changes. And what we've done, or what I've done in Parliament, is actually mentioned on a number of times and talked about it in Parliament, about the wonderful benefits for the food, the fashion, the shopping, the groceries, and the nightlife, that you can go there at 11 o'clock at night and still dine out, and I quite often dine at 11 o'clock at night with friends and family out in Harris Park. So I think it's really about, and we're looking at organising through their Chamber of Commerce, about things that we can support them to do in terms of the local community. But I guess it's really up to the local community to come up with many of those ideas, and me representing those people is to support those ideas and push them forth in the government agenda.
Okay. And so both Parramatta and Harris Park are homes to many skilled migrants and students.
And I think we should also not only that is Westmead and Wentworthville has very large and successful communities where Indian Australians live.
Yeah. So those skilled migrants and that population, what sort of avenues are being provided to support them?
In terms of
People who have just arrived in Australia.
Now, one of the things that I personally believe, having a background in university, is to encourage not just the Indian students, but Chinese or wherever they come from, Taiwan, Indonesia, wherever, Saudi Arabia, all international students to come here, because I think that some of our best Australians actually come in on student visas, stay here for 2 years, whether they get the degree, and economically it makes sense too, because all of a sudden they're spending $40,000 on an education, spending another $40,000 on living. They get a degree, and then I'm in favour of those people staying in Australia and becoming Australian citizens, because Australia benefits over the whole in terms of all of a sudden we've got well-educated, very good people that have paid money and all contribute to the economy. So I'm mostly in favour of international students actually staying in Australia, and I can see the value. And I'm disappointed in the federal government in the uncertainty they've put around, especially in the last couple of years in terms of changes to the immigration, which is a federal issue, obviously at a state, that makes it harder for the Indian community, Indian students to come to Australia and to be able to study, because they make wonderful, not only students, but wonderful new Australians.
Okay. Yeah. So the next question I had was regarding promoting cultural diversity, and I know Parramatta is a great initiative that's been brought about, but why is there no Indians on the actual board, the organising board of that? I'm looking with the Minister, and I've been in consultation a lot with George Souris, the Minister for Events, Tourism, Racing, and a lot of other things, which this falls under his remit. And it's certainly how we've been in government since March, so not a long time by any standard, and it's really getting our head around projects like Parramatta, which I have a very keen interest in, to making sure that we not only become even more successful, but certainly how we can actually involve more local communities. And when I go around, what I'm hearing about Parramatta especially is that the local communities aren't particularly involved in there. And whilst the government supports it financially, I think it's always at risk when we're just paying out money and not suiting the needs of the local community and the Indian community. And it'll only ever be sustainable if we attract segments of the Indian community to actually take ownership and support those people in the community and say, well, what do you really want in Parramatta and how best? And then we're assured that we can build it up, not only from these 40 or 50,000 people that go over the 10-day or week period, but why can't we have 250,000 or 500,000 people? And I see that as a peak event, which I'll always be fighting for to keep and expand. But why can't we actually use it to integrate not only just Indians, but other Australians from all the other communities? So we can have the Chinese or the typical Anglo-Saxon, and so that people from right around Sydney come right here to Parramatta, and that's what I'm very excited about. But that will take a little bit of time, and the only way we're going to reach those scales is actually involve the local community and get them on the board, or get them owning events and building it around what events that are possible. And I've always, I go to many Indian events, as you probably realise, and an event with 3, 5, even 10,000 people is just a normal weekend festival. And I think one of the fantastic things about the Indian communities love their festivals. And I think, so getting 250,000 people is not out of the realm, I don't think. Yeah, but so do you think by having an Indian community member on that board, you'll be able to reach out to a wider range of people? Whether
it's an Indian community, of course, someone has to be culturally sensitive and understand their communities. Whether it's on the board, whether it's informing on the decision-making process, the right people need to be on the board. And I haven't looked at the composition of the board myself. I understand it's carried over from previous years, so I personally haven't, so I couldn't name. I know there's a couple of Parramatta councillors on the board, and they're the only ones that I actually know. So I would say to you, the most important thing is to have the right people on the board making decisions, considered decisions to reflect the community's needs and the taxpayers' needs who actually fund it. So whether that's an Indian person, whether that's a Chinese person, whether it's an accountant, whether it's an engineer, the right people for the board.
Most definitely, I agree. So just in relation to not so much Indian community members, but community members in general, Parramatta and Harris Park have a few issues to do with parking, and what's happening with that? In
terms of parking for Harris Park, look, I think parking is a problem for all of Parramatta, not just Harris Park, and I think it's part of being a city. It's part of being the capital of Greater Western Sydney. I think that the council's done a good thing by removing the parking meters in there to encourage people to stay, to come and shop and stay for a couple of hours. I don't think we're ever going to solve parking issues. I think what we need to do is focus on alternates, such as the buses and trains, to make public transport more convenient and easy to use. I don't think there's a city in the world that's been able to build enough highways to build out congestion. My own view on parking is that for Parramatta and Harris Park, it's a critical issue, and really to get as many of those people who work in the city or work in Harris Park into parking areas, and that's what I'll be lobbying as a member for Parramatta, for funding of parking stations on the outskirts, so you can drive there in the morning, park your car, and then you can go into town, take the shuttle bus, go into town, then at night you can come and pick your car back up again. But that requires significant investments in terms of car spots, and we probably need in our area, Parramatta, including Harris Park, some 5 to 10, maybe even 20,000 car spots, and the average price of $25,000 a car spot for development, I think that's we're going to have to chip away at that slowly.
Yeah, but I think it's definitely something that we just to use public transport. It's definitely something that's good to encourage.
And public transport is the answer, because anybody who has a car fully well knows that it's very busy, but during school holidays, they say that's only a 3 to 5% reduction in people on the roads. Therefore, what we need to do is try and encourage that 3 to 5% to use public transport, and then that clears up the roads. So it's all about trying to invest more in public transport. And I think the budget this year, the state budget, was good in terms of committing works to the Northwestern Rail Link, an area that will grow by 100,000 residents, is predicted over the next 20 odd years, to get people out of their cars and onto the trains.
And there's been significant developments in Parramatta. Is there any plans for uplifting Harris Park Station in terms of more lighting, or perhaps putting a lift for disability access?
In Harris Park, Harris Park were very supportive of me, so I love Harris Park, and I love other areas in Parramatta, but particularly Harris Park is a favourite. And let me say to you that not only the station needs lifts, as well as Wentworthville Station actually needs lifts. And our state government have announced a program, special funding for stations, and that's based upon right around New South Wales, so they're being prioritised in terms of the busiest stations will get the lifts first. Obviously, Harris Park needs it. Now, the lighting is a separate issue in terms of security, and I'll be more than happy to make representation and push for lighting, for additional lighting to improve the safety. I mean, I think safety is of paramount concern, especially in the whole of the Parramatta, right around Parramatta Electorate.
So Mr. Nahal Gupta has become chairman of the Multicultural Business Advisory. Can you tell me a bit about that initiative?
Yep. The Multicultural Advisory Committee, the Business Advisory Committee, is actually a way that we're feeding back, because Australia is such a diverse population of people that come from lots of different parts of the world. I think it's about the state government recognising that it's not based upon Anglo-Saxon, businesses. That in fact there's a huge Indian community here, something 90,000 people in New South Wales, a huge Chinese community, and these people and these communities, and whilst we're all Australians, you know, we need to be informed about how best we can work with the community so that the government can make policies and legislation to best look after everybody around the whole state. And I think it's that diversity, and especially here in Parramatta, they often say Parramatta is actually very typical of the whole of Sydney. It's like the average. We have the average wage, and we have the average size household, and we have the average sort of different mix of people with different ancestry and things like that. So I think it's a fantastic way to feed back to the government and to listen to the communities that have traditionally not had much of a voice in government.
Okay. And finally, how does the federal government plan on continuing to promote multicultural diversity in the community?
Well, one of the good things that we're just initiating now is the advisory groups, as well as the business advisory groups. There's other advisory groups, and I'm the co-chair along with David Elliott on the Indian Multicultural Advisory Group that advises the Minister on different programs. So what we're doing at the moment is putting together community leaders for approval by the Minister, Victor Dominello, and then that committee then will meet and it will decide on its own priorities on how best, what we need to focus on in terms of, you know, feedback to government, you know, the pipeline of information that goes back and forth, so a communication, two-way, not just telling what we're doing, but certainly understanding the community. And my view, which I want to do, is for the committee to actually suggest projects, initiatives, ideas, or things that we can do as a committee, and then it's not even, that's the whole of the Indian community, what we can focus on as a government and work towards in terms of better catering for people with Indian ancestry.
Okay, that's great. Did you have any final messages for the Indian community?
Well, I think, you know, I think I'm in a very lucky position actually to be in Parramatta and have such a wonderful Indian community, Australian Indian community. I go to as many festivals and it never stops. I never stop being impressed by actually the enthusiasm and the participation of the Indian community, and I really look forward to being one of the co-chairs on that committee, because I think we can do some really good things, especially with Harris Park and Westmead and Wentworthville initiatives, and we'll be working with them on that in the future.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much for your time.